I genuinely think like we need more honesty because we're not not every closing is awesome.
Yeah.
Have you ever had one of those closings where like seller did not want to sell
Yeah.
and they're crying?
Yeah. Or
And
buyer, right? 2
the
days before, like, I can't buy this house, but
right.
yet, like, I'm gonna buy it because I don't want to be sued, right?
Or yeah, we've had those situations and they're not all the, hashtag blessed at another closing that we see on Facebook.
Yeah. Hey, I'm just Steve, the podcast here, and I'm with my good friend Valerie Garcia today. And so I asked ChatGPT because I use this all the time now. I don't know if you're using it these days, but with my dyslexia and ADD, it's great. So I put in write a bio for Valerie.
Oh no.
Use her website as an example and write it like a third grader because that's my education, right? So this is what a third grade from your email says about Valerie. Valerie Garcia is a speaker and writer. She helps leaders and teams embrace change and tell meaningful stories. Valerie believes in being real and taking bold steps. She wrote a book called You're Gonna Need Cake, which I got here, which I'm planning on getting a signature on, and then I can read it, to help people better leaders and create happier workplaces. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
I feel like that nails you,
that's
doesn't
good.
it? Yeah. Man, chat came through today. I like it. Well, thank you for
Yeah.
joining.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So Valerie and I, we've gone back like probably 7-8 years or longer
Than
probably
that.
10. Our days just bumping into each other at real estate conferences, and then you hit me up when you're moving from Canada back to West Michigan because this is where you grew up, right? And yeah, we've just stayed friends since
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
And it's so I'm going to just lay it out there and then we can go from there, right? So Valerie, if you don't follow her on social media, please do. She's a breath of fresh air because the genuine nature and authenticity is off the charts. And I appreciate that because it makes me try to be better in that, right? Where it's how do I communicate in a way that says like I am human, and I struggle, I conquer, I win, and I'm all the things, right? And so the podcast really centered around the idea of lenses, right? The idea of each of us wearing different lenses, and backgrounds, and our current stories tell a new story, right? And so I'm really excited to spend some time with you on sort of how to balance authentic you while your background obviously is writing the book, but ultimately you're a speaker and an educator in the real estate space, which obviously I'm in. And so your whole career is about recruiting in a way, or selling yourself to go to a convention to speak, which I've heard you obviously many times speak, and you do a wonderful job. But I said that before we even got on camera. I don't really understand how you attract these business owners that want like the crush it mentality, right? This idea of like you're going to come and teach my agents to go do more business and crush it in life. Maybe the Vander Chucky kind of thing. But then, you're brutally honest about your emotions, about where you sit, and each day I feel like I see a window into you. And so I don't know if that's a question or just a phrase, Paul. Like, I feel like that was just probably it was a lot, but how maybe back up. When did you decide that the real version of you, the authentic version, people need to know and love and trust? Where did that come?
That's a great question. So it wasn't, it definitely wasn't always like this.
Yeah.
I wasn't always like this. I was in corporate real estate at the sort of upper levels of a major brand for years. And my job was not just to educate, like my role was the hype girl.
Yeah.
I would get on stage in front of our brokers, our owners, our shareholders, our decision makers. And, my job was really to be like, everything's great, the jazz hands, and, like, hey, we're like you said, we're crushing it, and we're number one in market share, and like our initiatives are great, and we're recruiting, and things are good. And that was not how my life was going. That was not, that face that everybody saw, that, on stage and off stage, that was not how my life was. And so it really changed on the day. I had a colleague who asked me to lunch. And so we went to lunch, and I distinctly remember we ordered salads. We sat down, we looked at each other. I did not know her well. And she started to cry and in the restaurant. And she said to me, my business is failing. My marriage is failing. My relationships are failing. I'm really struggling with everything. And you seem to have it all figured out. What's your secret? And I really remember that day clearly thinking, oh, I am in the same boat. I am faking at work. My marriage is also failing. My world is falling apart. I am struggling every day, and I'm getting out there and pretending everything perfect. And that was the day I decided, like, if I am going to be a leader, I have to do better. I have to tell the truth. I have to do the hard things in the daylight, because I'm not giving anyone around me permission to do that. And I'm also not giving myself permission to be real. And very soon after that, I posted for the very first time on Facebook. I remember that day very clearly, and said, I haven't gotten out of bed in 2 days. Like, I know it looks perfect from the outside, but I am, like, things are not okay. And I will remember that forever, because I got hundreds, not just a few, hundreds of private messages saying, oh my God, me too. Like, I'm also struggling. This is really hard. This is a hard season. It was around Christmas time. I'm struggling. My kids are struggling. I'm on medication. All the things that we know everyone around us feels. And that was a critical moment for me of realizing, like, leaders are not leading if they're not being honest and real. And that doesn't mean we have to pour all of our messy emotions on everyone around us every day. But it does mean that we have to show up in a way that allows people to be who they are and ask for help.
Yeah. So how long ago was that?
I would say that was just about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you go back to my daily Facebook memories now, beyond 10 years, and everyone I look at was like, things are great.
Yeah.
Everything's amazing.
Yeah.
And not that I don't have those days now. I do have, like, things are great.
Yeah.
But there was a distinct shift.
Yeah, the journal of Facebook is great. I look at it as a journal now, right? It's like my entries each day is a journal entry, I think of it, right? And yeah, the memories, it's like, oh, okay, like 4 years ago, which was the memory that pulled up for me today. I was like, oh, like Bella was like 2 months old, and I'm trying, like, in a rental house, just in the process of finishing up divorce, and like, wow, okay, like how it's amazing to see the journaling of that world and say, okay, what was I faking that? What was I operating as, right? So yeah, I totally get that. You 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 talked about these 100 messages, right? And all of a sudden, the authentic, everybody else felt like they could, but I don't see people putting that out there still, right? How do you, like, so I think of that, like, I have a couple times, and I always, when I've put out like, hey, I'm pretty depressed, or I'm struggling, right? Everybody wants to fix it, right? And I always found it not to bring me up, right? Or not to create a space in which I can build from. It's always, for me, I don't know, the like, I'm with you too doesn't feel the same. Maybe that's the male version of that thing, right? It's like, I don't know what it is, but I always am like, okay, like, no, I'm not I'm not suicidal, folks. Like, I'm just struggling, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like maybe it's again a dude saying that they're struggling means like they're like really far gone or something. Um, but how do you, do you find that by being authentic like that and getting those responses, it does help you emotionally?
I think it does. I mean, to be clear, for anyone who's listening to this who doesn't follow me on social,
Yeah.
it's not like every day
No,
I'm
no,
like,
no. It's like
life is
once a month.
horrible.
It's like once a month. Yeah. Yeah.
But like every once in a while, there is a day. Like today, I posted like my heart is heavy today. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on in the world.
Yeah.
I'm both Canadian and American. There's political things.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot, and so I have days where I'm honest. Like I say, things are hard today, or I'm struggling, or um, and yeah, I think what helps is me being able to say it.
Mm.
And I think what helps is me not having to pretend. Yeah, I mean, there are going to be days where people go, "Oh, suck it up." And I got one of those last week. I
Mm.
got one that said, like, "Oh, why does everything have to be so negative?" And I was like, "Well, my last 10 days were awesome and happy and,
Yeah.
positive. And then yes, did I have a day where I woke up and things felt hard? Yeah. And if that's the only thing you saw and that's the only thing you took away, like that's not a me problem. Like that's not something I have to solve for you.
Well, and
Um,
that's an outward their lens, right? Like
sure,
when we talk about lenses, like that's
sure.
them probably trying to figure out that they feel the same thing, and you communicating it means that they have to sit in it and they don't want to sit in it,
Yeah. And
right?
there will be days I think where people will take what I'm putting into the world and go, well, not for me today. I'm having a great day. I'm sitting on the beach on vacation.
Hmm.
Things are good. And I think, great,
Yeah.
awesome. Um, but for me, it was more so I'm not going to fake it
Yeah.
anymore. On the days where things are good, they're great. And on days when things are hard, I'm going to say they're hard because I refuse to be that person that is just happy face and jazz hands
Yeah.
anymore because it doesn't serve me, but it also doesn't serve the people I lead.
Yeah.
It makes them look at me and go, you must have it all figured out.
Hmm.
And I don't.
Hmm.
I don't think anyone does. And I think the leaders or the personalities or the influencers that go, everything's great every day, after a while, not only do I not believe you, but I start to trust you a little bit less because I don't think that A, you're being real with me, but also don't think you're giving me permission to show up the way that I really am. Like I've had bosses and leaders, not the same thing,
Yeah.
say, leave your emotions at the door. Just leave it in the car, come into work, do your thing. Um, and you can only do that for so long before faking it becomes your personality, before it becomes, just who you are now. And I can tell you, like from experience, that's really hard. And also it is impossible to sustain without burnout
Yeah.
and long-term damage.
Yeah. So, you feel deep, right?
Yeah.
Like you take everything very deep,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
I'm for sure an empath.
Yeah. So was that childhood? Where did that lens come from that the depth of emotion is there for all things? Um, the politics as an
Mm.
example, I don't care. And that's really bad probably, but I get it, right? There's a lot going on in the world, but my little world
Mm.
of trying to raise 7 kids, 2 dogs, a cat, and now 13 chickens with a wife, like there's a
Mhm.
lot going in that nucleus that like, okay, the tariffs might happen today or tomorrow or whatever, and that's going to probably tank our economy for a little while. But I just have learned like I can't like for me, I will if I get into it, I get into it,
Mhm.
right? Like and so I've really had to say, okay, what things do I want to put into my world or into my brain eh, because it's not going to serve those that I am leading, right?
Yeah.
You because of I think it's your job and your world and everything. You bring a lot into your brain because you need to be able to communicate when you're on stage and leading people more so than I do. But but you feel so deep. You feel so deep, right? And so all of those emotions become bigger.
Mm.
Where, what was that like childhood? Where did that lens come from that all things you feel high and low? I don't know if you have a middle. I think you have highs like,
Yeah, I definitely have a
yeah.
middle. I think it's a lot of things. I grew up as the oldest daughter, 15 kids in my
Okay.
family.
Yeah.
You know,
That'll do it.
I was the caregiver from a very young age. I was the person that was, had to be the example for everyone,
Yeah.
and I had to be the first one to do everything.
Mhm.
I've also been a bit of the black sheep in my family forever. So I've always kind of been, different from everybody I grew up with.
Okay.
I traveled from a young age. I was an exchange student, which took me from a tiny town here in West Michigan
Yeah.
that had, had one stoplight to a city in a country that had just seen the fall of communism. My life changed immediately. My worldview changed. Seeing, things that were happening changed everything. And then I came back to a world that hadn't really
Yeah.
seen anything or changed anything. And
it still hasn't.
no, it still hasn't.
Right.
And my family still is in very much the same
Yeah.
place. Like, oh, like you, like, hey, we've got, chickens and kids.
Yeah.
And I'm over here like, but there's so much else going on. So I think it's just an awareness. I'm a traveler as well. I travel for work and for fun. I've been to like 50 countries. I'm very aware of what's happening in the world around me. And so I think that's a lot of it. But also, yeah, I mean, I'm in front of different audiences in different parts of the world every day. And as a speaker, you tend to have to adjust for the audience. You have to realize, like, when I'm speaking to an audience in Arkansas or, Oregon, they're very different.
Absolutely.
They're very different.
Yeah.
They're experiencing different things. And so, especially in the real estate realm, today I might be in a room full of people who are freaking out because their customers cannot get insurance.
Mm.
And they're in a flood zone and they can't make their livelihood happen unless they can figure out insurance. And there's a lot of emotion there and there's a lot of politics. And then the next day I might be in a room full of people who are like, look, the price of beef is really going to have an impact on our life for the next couple of years, or these tariffs. And so, yeah, I serve people who are in so many different situations.
Yeah.
That I feel like, like being myopic doesn't work. Like only going, well, this is only what I want to focus on because this is all that impacts me, doesn't work for me. I have to be aware of what the people I'm serving are feeling.
Yeah, because
and
you
experiencing.
you look at each person you're speaking to in the audience or at a brokerage as people you're leading, right? As
Or
my
serving,
right,
but yeah,
serving
same.
and lead, yeah. And so in that you need to be able to understand their worlds to be able to serve or lead well.
Yeah.
Which means that you need to be that the big feelings around each of the different things you have to because they're feeling it. Would that make sense?
I mean, I think it's just more of a matter of being able to empathize and understand. I don't want to, I'm always coaching speakers. Like, your job is not to go on stage and dump your feelings on them.
Right.
It's also not my job as a speaker to absorb all the feelings of everyone in the audience. But I have to understand who I'm speaking to. And I think this is sometimes my struggle with leadership in general, is that they're like, things are good, things are good, things are good. I'm like, things are good for a small portion of who you're talking to right now.
Mm-hmm.
We go to some of these large national conferences and they're like, overall, the luxury market's great. And I'm like, yeah, but most of us are not in the luxury market. Most of us are selling $200,000 or, less homes in rural areas that are, experiencing shifts in market, whatever. So it's not a matter of like, I want to absorb everyone's messy feelings, but I do want to make sure that I understand that I'm not, that I'm, however I'm feeling or however they're feeling, it's not singular.
Yeah.
It's
an acknowledgement of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is different than majority of speakers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
it's
that you
true.
would say that's your I would say that's probably part of your niche, right? As
Hmm.
being a speaker, right? And then that breeds that authentic you on social media as well, the highs and the lows. Because if we think of real estate speakers, very few are, they all have their thing, right? Either
Yeah.
they all have their stick. And you just know it. I mean, I've seen so many of them, I
Yeah.
know. And so it's, you're just like, okay, you're going to speak about the NAR settlement. You're going to
Yeah.
speak about for sale by owners and cold calling. Like they all have their
Yeah.
thing.
But I talk to humans about humans.
Yeah,
That's what I
that's,
do. And so when I talk to people about, if like Steve, you serve humans, messy, emotional humans. And when I speak, I'm talking to you about messy, emotional humans.
yeah,
I'm not saying, we're not talking about commodities. We're not talking about selling shoes. We're talking about humans. And humans react to their emotions. Humans show up differently based on their own experiences and their lenses and their emotions. And so when I go in and I talk to people, I need to understand not only what their lenses are, but the lenses of the people they're talking to.
hmm,
Like I did a full day CE session in West Virginia a few months ago, and it was rural West Virginia, like
okay,
legit deep
yeah,
West Virginia. And it's a place I grew up going on vacation in the
okay,
summers.
okay.
So I was excited to go
What
back.
town?
It was, oh, I couldn't even tell you. I mean, it was tiny.
Okay,
There was one hotel.
yeah,
And that those kinds of people are normal people. Those are the kinds of people that most of us are,
yeah,
right? And I found out when I was there that there are two entire counties in the state of West Virginia that still do not have drinkable running water. In 2025, in a state in the United
yeah,
States, and realizing like, oh, these are the things that like I didn't know. I don't talk about those
right,
things. We don't talk about those things. And knowing that impacted how I talk to those people. Because I'm
yeah,
not going in there going, show up in your, in your
yeah,
Porsche
yeah,
and make it look good. It's, you are basically struggling to help generational, break generational problems with real estate.
yeah,
Like you aren't just helping somebody buy their dream home. You are literally helping people break generations of poverty
hmm,
in some of those places. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel those things because these are the humans I serve. Like
yeah,
I see them. I
yeah.
see the people that I talk to.
Yeah. Is that how you have then attracted your audience in your speaking engagements, is by your authentic self on social media? That, I mean, obviously it comes from years of putting yourself out there, right? And doing
Yeah.
all different kinds of training. But you seem very full and busy.
Yeah.
And busyness and full doesn't mean happiness, but you seem to be found your niche,
Yeah.
if I would. And I remember a couple years ago you were still trying to figure that out,
Yeah.
even, right? You
Yeah.
were working for different consulting companies and
Hmm.
trying to figure out, what is the dream or what is the niche for you. Have you fallen in, like you've fallen into that now, or you feel like you've not, I don't think falling in is the right word. You've put the time in to build that niche that people are saying, oh yeah, if I want this kind of speaker, that is Valerie.
Yeah. I think that I've allowed myself to be who I am
Mm,
with intent.
yeah.
I hear a lot of people come to me after I've done a talk or a workshop or whatever and say, you're just real. And I like to hear that
Hmm.
because I don't want somebody going, oh, you are nothing like what I expected. Like
Yeah.
that is not what I'm going for. Um, but I think there are a lot of people out there going, everything's great. Now's a great time to buy or sell. Get out there and crush it. Um, and I think there needs to be somebody saying, look, here's how you empathize with humans who are going through a really hard time. Or here's how you understand how to talk to humans when the market shifts. Or here is how you address things that are difficult to have conversations around. Because, we are in an industry that really rewards the shiny and the awesome and hides the rest of it.
Yeah.
Where,
Especially right now, it's award season,
my
right?
God,
It's
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe
Look,
the amount of awards.
You've made a million,
yeah.
zillion, trillion dollars. Good for you. You must be great.
Yeah.
But you and I both know that like that has absolutely zero correlation with how you're actually doing.
Feeling. Yeah.
And so I genuinely think like we need more honesty because we're not like not every closing is awesome.
Yeah.
Have you ever had one of those closings where like seller did not want to sell?
Yeah.
And they're crying.
Yeah. Or
And
buyer, right? 2 days before, like I can't buy this house, but
right.
yet like I'm going to buy it because I don't want to be sued. Right?
Or yeah, we've had those situations and they're not all the, you know, #blessed at another closing that we see on Facebook.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I am definitely not out here saying like just be a hot mess everywhere.
Right.
But acknowledge what is real.
Yeah.
I think, and so, yeah, I do. I get on stage and I say that and I say, look, here's how we have hard conversations and here's how we do marketing that is authentic and here's how we talk to humans when they're struggling and here's how we put that into the work that we do. And I think people are drawn to that. And, you know, I'm doing fine for work because there are people out there that are like, I'm really tired of faking the shiny.
Yeah.
How do I do this business and serve my people and not fake the shiny?
Yeah.
There is a way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first got into this business 18 years ago, right? The analogy of fake it till you make it was like just normal, right? And it was like, okay, like, what does that mean? Okay, I'm going to go to JCPenney's and buy my first 3 suits, even though I was a painter, right? And I'm going to wear a suit every day because that's what fake it till you make it looks like. So I'm going to act like I'm successful. And you name those things, right? And you do those activities that you believe are the right things as you're faking it, hoping someday you'll make it, right?
Yeah.
And if I make it, then I can learn how to be genuinely me. But right now I can't be genuinely me until I fake it enough. Is a very normal, and that was 18 years ago. I think that's still true today, if not in a more weird way because of social media, right? Like social media was just starting. I mean, my Facebook posts were like, I'm going to do an open house today, right? That was 17 years ago. I see those on my feed. I'm like, oh,
feeling
wow.
positive.
Yeah, feeling positive. I got another purchase agreement on 47 Lafayette today. I hope I can sell it, right? It's like, what are you talking about right now?
Yeah.
There's, and so, but I mean, with images and reels and activity,
filters.
Yeah, but it's all the things, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard to figure out how to, to communicate those balancing acts. And I want to make sure that I'm clear. Like, I love you for your authentic nature of all of the authenticness because every day you basically, I feel like in the morning, communicate how you are in the world that day, right?
Yeah.
And so, yes.
So I can tell you where that came
from. Yeah, please do. But 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, like you said, like are just like rainbows and like brightness and cheer and full of vibrance. And then all of a sudden it's like, not today, folks. Like today, shit's hitting the fan and I'm going to be honest. Like, I don't like it. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, where did it come from?
So when I was sort of like in the very depths of depression, I had moved back to Grand Rapids. I had left the life that I had known for 20 years. I was caring full time for my grams. COVID was, it was all the things.
Yeah, it was a lot.
It was a lot. I had a therapist say to me, like, what is the thing that is, like, I was like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. I'm really struggling. And a therapist said, like, what is the thing that would help you get out of bed in the morning? And I'd be like, I need a thing. Like, I check this off and now I get up. And she said, well, what do you do first thing in the morning? And I was like, I doom scroll like everyone.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, what if every day you posted something positive and then got up? And so that became my habit. So, I was like, okay, I have to find something positive today. I have to talk about something encouraging and then I will get up. And so it has become a habit. And there are some mornings where it's like, okay, the positive thing is I'm awake, I'm alive, and I'm getting out of bed. And then there are days where it's genuinely like things are really good and, and I'm getting out of bed. but it's become my routine of just checking in with myself of like, okay, I can tell like right now I'm struggling, but I'm going to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
you're checking in with yourself, but I feel like you're checking in with me too on each post. And
yeah,
I don't know if that was, it sounds like that was not the goal.
no,
The goal was for you to be authentically you and to check in and have a routine to get you going on the
yeah,
day. But anybody that follows you, and I don't see them all, but I see, a couple a week and I'm like, oh, okay, she's checking in on me. Like,
yeah,
oh, okay, yeah, good. All right. Like,
yeah.
we're sunny today and I'm sunny
Yeah.
too, right?
And I get
Or
a lot of
yeah.
those like, "Oh, how did you know exactly what I was feeling?" Or, "Oh, you're
Yeah.
talking right to me." And I'm like, and I always say when someone says that, you'll see my comments. "Oh, I'm just talking to myself." Like if
Yeah.
you're coming along for the ride, like that's cuz we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
And it's honestly it's a daily like, okay, like it's today's going to be an easier day, but maybe today's going to be a harder one, but we're still doing this. We're
Yeah.
still getting up
And
and doing it.
you're taking what was it? Like you're taking on the role of communicating, they're then responding to that communication, but you're not taking on their burdens, right? By especially that response is,
Yeah.
okay, but I'm talking about myself. Welcome to the ride, but you're not allowing those emotions of theirs to then affect your emotions for the most part, right? That it can
And
happen, but
I'm not giving mine to you.
right.
It's not a day where I'm like, everything sucks. We should all be awful.
Yeah.
It's I'm struggling today.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's I'm struggling today. What have you got? What's positive? Tell me.
Mm-hmm.
Or, asking for help.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest lesson that has come out of these past 10 years for me is ask for help. Ask
Mm.
for what you need. Like I have learned that, when I get to that point where, okay, I got to get off the couch. I got to get out. I've got to do something.
Yeah.
I've got to be around people, whatever. I ask for it. And it's so important that we do that because it gives the people around us permission to do the same thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've always said to people like, when you ask for self help, there's very few humans that won't. Like, it's
Mhm.
ingrained in us in our
Mhm.
nature to be helpers, right? And so this idea, like, hey, I really need your help, or I'm really struggling. Can you help me? There's very few that would say no to that, right? And the idea that like, hey, let's grow together as humans and be authentic. How would someone start this road, right? Like you've started this road,
Mhm.
right? And you've grown on it. And then I think because of it, you're attracting more people, but that's a scary thing to
Mhm.
be authentically you. I obviously started this podcast. I think we're releasing one today. I think number 10 comes our 10th episode comes out today. Um, I didn't know what I was starting when I started this, right? And then all of a sudden I had like 3 people on talking about divorce and then people asking me about mine and where I failed in it. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my, like this was not the intent, right? But then I had a daughter dance this weekend and
I
yeah,
saw the picture.
yeah. Which again, that's always a weird thing, right? Because the picture is great. She didn't really want to take a picture with dad. She's not really a pro dad thing, right? Afterwards, she was super happy to talk to dad. But yeah, there was days throughout the week that she's like, I don't want to go with you, dad. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, okay, let's work through that, I guess. Right. So yeah, the picture always looks good. Right. But
Yeah.
it's like, oh man, like it was iffy
Yeah.
until we took that picture. Right. And then I was like, oh, okay, we're good, I guess. But yeah, we were at daddy daughter dance and the girls all go and dance. They don't want to dance with their dad. There's a couple of really dads that like, I can dance actually. I went to Ottawa. Like I can dance pretty good. But she's embarrassed by me and she doesn't want me around, and which is most dads, right? Unless we're doing the YMCA or the shuffle, then maybe the dads can participate. Otherwise it's, the girls dance and the dads find a corner to talk. So we're in the corner talking, which is like 90% of the dance for the dads. They feed us and they put us in a separate room while the girls are dancing. But where I was going with that is I was sitting there with a friend and we were talking and another dad came up and he's like, dude, the podcast is legit. And I was like, yeah, It is, and it's fun, and I'm enjoying. And he's like, no, like for real, like I've watched them all, and this guy's, business owner, buttoned up, and I'm like, oh, and I got that gut ache, like,
Mm.
oh man, there's no hiding in my
Yeah.
podcast. I haven't hid it
Yeah.
here around this room. This room feels very safe, almost in a way, a place of worship for me. And it's like, it was the first day I met Paul and was on someone else's podcast. And I'm saying the chills just talking about, like, I walked in and said, this is
Yeah.
where I'm intended to be right now in my life. So so that's hard.
So I feel that every day.
Yeah.
I actually had a day 2 days ago where I put something on Facebook and then I immediately messaged a friend and was like, I feel like I'm gonna puke. Like I
Yeah.
can't. And honestly, it is a practice. It is not something that comes naturally to me to work that muscle of honesty and
Yeah.
transparency and vulnerability. I don't think that comes naturally to anyone. And, maybe I've gotten to a point where from the outside it looks like it's effortless, but it is not. It is a daily choice to be like, oh, I'm going to talk about something that's hard and real, and I'm going to get hate, and somebody's going to unfriend me, and somebody's not going to like me, and I might lose a client. And there's all those normal, natural fears of, because I watch people that everything's perfect and shiny.
Mm-hmm.
You could all, you would be very comfortable hiring them for anything, but you have absolutely no idea what they're feeling or thinking or how they live their lives. And we've been taught that's how we're supposed to be on
Yeah.
social.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be very shiny and very pretty. And that just doesn't work for me anymore. And so, yeah, there's that gut every day of like, oh, like this morning I wrote, today's a heavy day. And immediately my gut was like, and then I got in the car and drove here for an hour, not checking my Facebook, thinking, oh my God, like who's going, oh, Val again.
Yeah.
But, there are also people that are like, I feel it too. So it's a choice. It's a choice every day of like,
Okay.
do
Well,
I
thank you
show
for saying
up?
that, because that's hard.
Oh my God, yeah. Every day I feel it.
Yeah.
And how you have that gut feeling when like somebody made a mean comment and you're like, oh, like now everyone hates me and like everything's terrible. I feel it all the time.
Yeah.
But I choose to do it anyway, even though I know that feeling is going to come. And there are days where I'm like, here's a picture of my cat, everything's great. And then I get out of bed. But there are days when I go, you know what, I am going to choose to be honest today. And whether it's good or bad or positive or negative, or my parents are making me crazy. I saw one of those in my memories the other day. My parents are like your quintessential, like Midwest parents. They've never been anywhere. They've never done anything. Like these are my parents, the ones that are like, get on the plane with like stuff you're not supposed to take over the border in their bags. And then be like, right before they leave, be like, oh, it's okay that I have like, fish and apples in my bag. No, like it's not, but they're just, and so there are days where I'm like, oh my God, my parents make me nuts. And, like I'll talk about those things, or like even living with Grams. She was lovely. The world loved my Grams. She was amazing. But there were days where like, I remember the day I came home and she was like, oh, we had 4 jars of mayo and I combined them all into one. And I was like, because one of those was 4 years old and you wouldn't let me throw it away. So now we're never eating mayo again. Like, like you have moments. And I talk about those too, because we have to laugh at humanity or we'll cry. And so, but every time I choose to talk about something real, I have that feeling in my gut of like, is it too much? Will someone hate me? Will someone not like me? Will someone not hire me because I'm being human? And then I realize, somebody will, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that's definitely a newer mindset, I feel like, that the world is trying to figure out, where it's this like, how do we be authentic? Because we realize that the bullshit meter's there now on social media. So we want authentic people, in genuine, but how much do we really want of that from them? Right. But yeah, it was nerve-wracking, because the dad was talking about the podcast, and then the other dad like we go on spring break with. I grew, like, our boys have grown up together. We just got done with sushi with our daughters together. And he's like, really? And he's on his phone downloading the podcast, and I'm like, will he not like me after this?
Yeah.
Like, is he really my friend?
Dude,
And
I wrote an
right?
entire book about how my life fell apart when I got divorced.
Yeah.
Oh, do you know what like, to put that in a book? Like, I grew up in a family that didn't ever say the D word out loud.
Yeah.
Like, it just didn't exist. And to put that in a book, I used both D words in that book, depression and divorce.
Yeah.
I have siblings that still won't read it because,
Really?
we don't talk about those things. And it's like,
because
yeah,
allowing that in our spirit could allow it to occur.
absolutely. We don't
right?
talk about these hard
Right.
things, but I mean, I am around leaders every day, leaders that lead organizations of thousands of people and leaders that lead 2 or 3 people.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. Like, if we are leading people and we are not allowing ourselves or anyone around us to talk about hard things, we're never going to talk about anything real, ever. And like, what kind of world is that? And also, like, how stressful is that to never talk about things that are real? It's scary. 100% it's scary. Like, there are thousands of people out there that don't know me that have read a book about how I've struggled. Oh, like, yeah.
Yeah.
That
So
gives
let's
me
talk
the
about the book.
stomach.
So those that have not read it, which includes me, who is this written? I mean, I think of writing a book would be about me. Like, I've thought about writing the I'm
Yeah.
Just Steve book
Yeah.
over time about my childhood abuse and
Mhm.
overcoming that, and then where that led me to here now, right? I would write it for me, just like the podcast honestly is for me. I felt that when I first came in. I'm like, I want to do this for me. I don't really care who listens. It's just I want to hang out and have these conversations
Yeah.
because it opens me up to be a better human. So I'm sure you wrote this for you to release. I feel like that would be a release. Each of these videos, podcast for me is a little release of that filter where it's like, okay, I'm breaking down my filter again because this human is coming genuine and I have to come genuine
Yeah.
to be able to release. So I'm assuming that this book was meant to release for you, but was also, the goal is always to let other people in to grow and know
Yeah.
that it's okay. So what am I, when I do the audio that you recorded in your closet, or if I actually do get to reading the book, which I actually do prefer to read
Do
it,
you?
even though it's very difficult. But when I read it, and I don't ever finish a book, Valerie. So dyslexia and ADD people, we get to like, 2/3.
Look, I recorded the
2/3.
audio version just for
Yeah,
people like you.
2/3 is a really good book read.
Okay, so in this
so
case, read the last 2.
yeah, what parts do I read? No, but like who is this intended to connect with? Who would grow from this, and what are we learning from this?
So I genuinely think as humans that it's part of it's like the cost of entry for life is to lean back and lift people as we climb. It's to, throw a roadmap or a lifeboat to the people behind us. Because I have certainly benefited from the people that have done that for me. I have certainly benefited from the people that have said, look, I've been through this and here's how I survived it, or here's how I overcame it. And, and not just big things, but I've benefited in work from people that have been like, look, I've been there. Here's how you deal with this. Or, just so many of a matter of things. And so for this, really for me, was leaning back and saying, look, like, this is sort of how I survived this. I mean, I did nearly 20 years of corporate life, and in a world where, you are told, leave it at the door. And it led to burnout and stress and anxiety. And I really enjoy work now. Like, I love the work that I do, and not just because I'm not in a corporate space, but because I've learned to like be myself at work, and that makes me love it. And I didn't love it 10 years ago. And it wasn't a reflection on where I was or the company I worked for, or the people I worked with. It was that I was pretending like it was my job.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to do that anymore. And so this really is, it's for me, it's a roadmap of like where I started. There's a reason the very first chapter is failure, because that's where a lot of us start. We start in a big, deep puddle.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes from there. And the roadmap that I outline in this book is something that I have to go through every day. Almost every day I start back at the beginning. It's not like, oh, I've made it, I got to joy and everything's great. No, it's every day I have to choose to be like, oh, I mean, there's a chapter on anger, which we don't like to talk about anger at work. Whoa, being angry, like that's, especially for women, like that's not okay. But it's normal and natural. Anger is a boundary setting emotion. Anger is the thing that allows us to do something about it. Anger is the thing that propels us forward. Like the research around each of the emotions on the map in this book have led me to go, this is a practice. We choose curiosity, we choose confidence, we choose anger, we choose compassion. And really like it's just kind of a journal of how I got out of the mud puddle and how I continue to get out of the mud puddle every day around all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's a bit of a roadmap for the people who are in the puddle as well.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you for writing it. And I will read it. I will. Because I want to learn. So what is the authenticity map?
So the authenticity map is literally just a map of all of the emotions that we experience. You've heard of the 7 stages of grief.
Yeah.
And they're very real.
Yeah.
And the 7 stages of grief are, sort of it's a linear path, but the authenticity map is a circle because we never, ever leave messy. We just keep circling around it. And whereas the stages of grief sort of start you at the beginning and end you at everything's great again, which is not true because grief never ends. We know this.
Yeah.
The authenticity map is something that sort of helps me every day go, okay, I'm starting back at the beginning, or I'm starting on step 2 or 3, and I'm gonna start over again and keep going. And it really outlines not only all the emotions that we feel in all of the messy parts of work and life, but all the roadblocks that keep us from moving forward, like perfection, or comparison, which is my personal downfall. Oh, that person looks great and they must have it all figured out and I must be terrible. We all feel all of these. And really it's, for me, it's just kind of the map that's been sitting on a sticky note on my mirror in my bathroom for 10 years of like, all right, this is the stage you're at, keep going.
Where did you create this, or did you hear?
Did.
You did. Okay. Yeah. And so, I don't know anything about it. I just opened to this page and then asked you the question, but it's cool. I don't know if you guys can see that, but ultimately it's a bubble, and then there's a spiral of the emotions in it, and you then just each day pick where you're starting, and then you try to end with joy. Is that the goal?
Yep.
So you're starting either with failure or fear or bravery or curiosity or anger and compassion, or confidence, or ego. Like you're trying to throughout the day point towards joy.
Yep. Yep. I mean, I think that's the.
Is that why you wear the yellow jacket?
No.
I mean, I saw you right away, right? And you're in your yellow jacket, which I think is joy. Like it's like you're putting on your cape or something of joy immediately and walking out the door.
Yeah, I mean, I think that isn't something that I used to do. I didn't aim for joy. I aimed for like survive.
Yeah.
Get through the day, get through the job, get the paycheck, get the client. I think there are a lot of people that are going through life like that. Like just get through it. And I talk about that in the book. I always say like in the hardest parts, like I always thought of that song we sang at summer camp, like going on a bear hunt.
Yeah.
And we would say like, can't go over it, can't go under it, got to go through it. And forever, like that was my life, was just like, I just got to get through this. I got to post something on Facebook. I got to show up. I got to do the thing. Until I got to the bear in the cave and realized I was scared, and I was scared of what people were going to think. And I'm still, human enough to say, what are people going to think? But every day, my goal now is to not just survive the day, but like find something to be joyful about in the day.
Yeah. Um, is this, do you have a gratitude journal, or where is this your journaling process?
Honestly, I think my morning Facebook post is really
Your
the
journal.
stand-in for that.
Yeah.
It's just become my habit, and you'll
Yeah.
notice, like, usually I post on Facebook between like 7 a.m. and 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Eastern, depends on where I am in the
Yeah.
world. But yeah, that's my thing, is like check in with myself. Oh gosh, yeah, maybe today's going to be a bravery day. Maybe today's going to require me to be, like extra gentle with people around me or with myself, or maybe today's a day where I wake up and I'm just like, things are freaking amazing. That's all normal.
So today started with fear. Which was the emotion that you started
Yeah,
with
today
when you
was
made the
definitely
post?
yeah, I think today was a fear day. I mean, yeah, there's a lot going on. I have family on both sides of the border. I think I'm feeling it today in terms of like you said, I've let in a lot of news in the
Yeah.
last couple of weeks,
Hmm.
and it's starting to feel real and scary for people that are paying attention to
Yeah.
the state of the world. Um, because I know that that's going to impact people that I care about, yeah, that's hard. So I started in that space, but that also means that if I know I'm starting out there, I know where I'm going from there.
Yeah. So explain that to me. So like, what is the process that you release that into the world of saying, I feel fear,
Yeah.
that I'm checking in with my emotion this morning. I'm putting it out in the world that I feel fear
Yep.
because of the politics ultimately of the world right now.
Yep.
Um, how do you then strive for joy after that is placed right out there?
Yeah. So the first step out of fear is bravery, which means you do it scared.
Yeah.
Like, you're never going to do anything if you wait till you're
So
not scared.
is the bravery just admitting the fear
Yeah.
in the post?
Yeah.
That's the bravery. So that's your
Absolutely.
first step,
Yep.
is
Hey,
like,
this is
I
where I'm
feel
at.
fear, so I'm going to be brave and say it out wide for
Yep.
anybody that wants to listen can see that.
Also, I'm going to sit here and talk about it in
Right.
front of
However many people listen.
everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, the, and then it's out there. And now I'm doing the thing scared. I got up, I got dressed, I showed up here, I'm doing the thing. But the next step out of that is, okay, what does that mean for me? And what does that mean for the people around me? And so now I start asking questions, and I start asking, like, okay, if I can do this scared, like, what does that mean I can do? And what can I do to solve this? And how do I get that feeling out of here?
Hmm.
And so, that moves me into curiosity of, okay, what do I need? What do I need to ask for? And who can help me? And how do I move forward? And where do I go from here? And the most important question Harvard found when you're feeling curious or fear is to ask, what if?
Mm.
Okay, well, what if I'm not the only one? What if there is something I can do? What if this isn't the worst it's ever going to get? What if this isn't the best?
Yeah.
And then move forward. And typically I find, like, we start in failure, we move forward enough to say, I've screwed up, or I need help. We get to fear, and it literally just propels us forward into, okay, I can feel all these emotions and I can do something about it, and I can show up.
Yeah, I think this wheel for me is hitting because I think that we don't want to acknowledge that we have these these feelings throughout the day,
Right.
when we're intending on joy, or we're intending on curiosity or confidence, right? Like, if I think of like the positive words here, or what we believe are positive, but the failure, fear, and bravery words are also positive if we acknowledge them, and acknowledge that literally everyone woke up with those same emotions,
Yep.
right? I don't care who you are, right? When you're driving to work, you are feeling all of these feelings, right?
Yep.
Or when you're picking up your child and dropping them off, you know, they're all there,
Yep.
right? And so the question just is, how are you working through this circle to get to
Yep.
that place?
Yeah. So it became a really real roadmap for me of, like, you can see you're never out of the mess. You're always in
Yeah.
the mess. The mess is the life that we live and the work that we do. But, just realizing if we can sit in one emotion and just stay there forever, or we can experience the others that help us move forward.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, a lot of people have sort of pushed back on this book. Like, well, I don't want to be messy. Like, people don't want me to be messy at work. Like, people don't want messy leaders. We're all messy. Every one of us. It's a matter of whether we acknowledge it and move forward through it and speak it and solve it, or we deny it and fake it forever.
Well, I think that the word messy just makes people think negatively,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, wait a minute, like if I realize I'm a hot mess all the time, but I'm a work in progress, like then I can control and
Yeah.
clean, right? If I don't acknowledge it, I can't clean
Oh,
it.
I mean,
right?
I'm a joyful mess every day.
Yeah.
Every day I'm messy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that I don't see it as a bad thing. I see it as humanity. Like, humans are messy.
Yeah. There's chaos all over,
Yes.
right? And we're
Oh,
trying to
God.
figure out how to, you know,
And you know what? If you weren't messy at all, you wouldn't be interesting. Like, you would be the most boring. Could you imagine if like everybody was just like perfect? Like, everybody was very, like there was a movie about that. What was that? Stepford. Like, if everybody was robotic and
Yeah.
everybody was perfect, I would be bored out of my mind.
mm-hmm.
Messy people are the most interesting. Messy people have stories. Messy people have learned things. Messy people are experiencing things. I want to be around more messy people.
Right. Well, messy people that will acknowledge that they are,
Sure.
right? Because we all are. It's just the acknowledgement to say, like, yep, like I am. Which again was that gut check for me this weekend at the Daddy Daughter Dance. Was like, oh boy, they're gonna see I'm messy, right? Like, what am I putting out there in the world? And and then John texted back like the next yesterday, and he's like, dude, I've watched 3 of them so far. This is great. Like, you should see if you can get the boys all on a couch, or like, here's some ideas of like other things that you should talk about. And I was like, wow, okay.
Because he's like, oh, I feel seen and not alone.
Yeah.
And oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. And we've had those
Yes.
conversations around the school because we've had some struggles before with the school. Like, we love the school that the boys are in, but also because of how conservative it is, we've had
Sure.
issues, right? Or I have, because of the D word, divorce, ultimately. And so, yeah, to acknowledge those things and communicate, like, hey, and realize, oh wait, there's a lot of other people here that are in this messy world. And that, like, it's
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
All of us.
yeah,
All of us.
yeah,
Even the ones who look like you've got it all together.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I think that has been the most awesome thing about showing up and writing the book and talking to people, is that every single human on the planet has their own mess.
Yeah.
And it's so much more fun when we're not like, no, everything's great. Everything's great. It's fine. It's great. Everything's great. It's so much more fun to be honest and be real, because now we can actually move forward.
Yeah. Well, and I've brought it up probably every podcast since Brooke's been here, that I'm new at this. I've never done this, right?
Right.
Like, we've never been here in the world as we are today,
That's
right?
right.
Like, yes, there might be history on tariffs, or there might be history on presidents and countries, but no human is the same as they were yesterday or even an hour ago, right? So to say like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing, it's like, no one really knows what they're doing. They're all trying to figure it out. The question is, how genuine do they want to be when they're trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah. And look, it is, I get it. Like, it is terrifying to show up in the world as a vulnerable human.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. I get it when there are leaders like, I'm leading tens of thousands of people. I can't say anything because I don't want to alienate anyone, or I don't want to cause our stock to drop, or it's just as terrifying for somebody to go, well, I'm going to tell my best friend something that's going to, potentially change the way they look at me. It's terrifying to be a feeling human in the world.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
But when we do it, even just a little bit, we realize like, oh, this is how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be feeling humans in the world. Like, that is how we were created. We weren't created to be, robots. And I'm still figuring it out every day. Every day is a day where I'm like, here we go again. Let's figure it out.
Yeah, and I appreciate rules and guidelines and processes and procedures, right? Mess doesn't doesn't take away from that.
Oh, I mean, I am the most Virgo that is ever going to Virgo. But yeah.
Like we're having a disagreement with Ellen Grace's school that her boys go to. It's also a conservative school, and not in a negative way, but just in a like the rules are based on a familial outline that isn't our familiar outline, right? And so we understand the rules, and they make sense 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when divorce wasn't as prevalent, or that both parents want to show up, and then there's another parent that's vested in the growth of those children. And it's an interesting thing to be like, hey, that policy doesn't. How do we like? We don't want to throw all your policies away. And we get that, like, we could go to a different school, so we're choosing the policies that you have, but let's start be authentic and, hey, like, does that policy even make any sense? Because and to stick in that world doesn't help anybody, right?
Yeah.
And I had a great conversation with the head of schools, and we're working through it. The difference, though, was that he was willing to acknowledge that, right? And as a leader, it was really interesting. I called him and I just said, hey, we're struggling. And I called because I'm not as spicy as Ellen Grace. So I started that. I said, I'm the not as, I can be aggressive and I can push, but I am less spicy and more political. So I'm making the call on our family's behalf, because I can communicate a little clearer. And Ellen Grace asked me to do so. I'm like, do you want me to call? She's like, yeah, you're going to be way better at this, right? But he said, I said, how was school? And he said, it's tough.
Yeah.
There's a lot, when you're trying to build a Christian school that's gone through a growth of, almost doubling over the last 5 years since COVID. It's tough, and there's a lot of things that like made sense 5 years ago that don't make sense anymore.
We could do hours of podcasts on just that, of like, at some point, loving people where they are is more important than this is how we've always done it, or even this is how we have always believed. Loving people as they are is, I mean, I think that's really the core of the entire book. Really, is just our job is to set a table and invite people to pull up a chair. And that is so true in leadership. That is true in your situation. Like, at some point we have to stop saying, well, this is just the way it should be, and realize we have to love people where they are.
Well, I think ultimately that emotion allowed him to motion, right? So being authentically like, hey, Ellen Grace is spicy, and so I'm making the call, allowed him to be like, oh, I can now be open and transparent. This isn't something where Steve's going to come after me. And like, I know Steve has got an issue because he's calling on behalf of the family unit, and Ellen Grace has asked him to. So I know that one of the two is fully worked up already. Right? And that could be, she calms me down plenty. I get spicy in my own ways at different things. But I think that showing up authentically for him allowed him to be like, yeah, it's tough doing my job. I love it, and it's good, and we have lots of positives, but boy, I'm not seeing as many right now. And I was like, wow, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that too. And now we're at a level field that we can actually have a genuine conversation of the struggle that I'm having with a policy, and him knowing that he's going to acknowledge my emotion around it, Ellen Grace's emotion around it. And then it left me as being a leader, and then me ultimately having to follow his leadership, because we've signed up for that, being that he's head of schools for a kid. It made me say, even Ellen Grace, after the phone call, I said, it was a really great phone call, and I don't know what will come of it, but even if it doesn't go our way, I am going to back his decision because of how he authentically showed up in the conversation and acknowledged that I might not be able to do anything about this situation. I hear you. I see your point, and I can acknowledge that doesn't really make sense, but it might be something that we still have to stay with that policy. And I was like, dude,
It's an awesome example.
I want to hug you,
Yeah.
right? Like, thank you
Yeah.
for being like truthful, honest, and
Yeah.
transparent.
And even if you disagree,
Yeah.
right?
Which I think that's our issue, right? I mean, we're not going to get into politics here, but I think that that is our issue in politics and in the world we live in right now, is that we're afraid of authentic conversation because everybody doesn't know how to agree, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't need an agreement. I don't need Ben to agree with me other than to acknowledge
Yes.
me as human, right?
Yeah.
To acknowledge my emotion and Ellen Grace's emotion, and to say that those emotions are just.
Yeah.
That's what he said,
Yeah.
right? Those emotions are just. I understand them. I don't know if I can do anything about it, but I am, because you shared with me, going to see if I can.
But I think in order to do that, we have to acknowledge our own emotions.
Right.
And that's my morning check-in.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? If I know I'm starting today from a place of, oof, things are hard and heavy, then I know I'm automatically bringing to the table that to start with. And if I don't acknowledge that about myself, the way I react to everyone else's emotions is not going to be good. But if I know that I'm starting out the day knowing like, okay, today is hard and I'm feeling the things, then I can put on that lens of like, I'm listening to you through that.
Yeah.
I'm listening to that through that. That guy who just cut me off in traffic, I'm looking at him through that lens of I already started out here. Yeah. And I mean, that's where I look at that map in that book every day and go, all right, well, if I know where I'm starting, I can't control where anyone else is starting on this map. But if I know where I'm starting, I know what I'm bringing to the table and how I'm looking at other people and interacting with other people through the lens that through the lens that I have. And that self-awareness, it's not like, that's vulnerable too.
Yeah.
But gosh, like that's the work. That is the work of being human, is being aware.
Yeah. I think a theme, Paul, that we're definitely seeing in all these is the idea of morning journaling, right? Like I can't think of a guest that I've had on yet that has not said that's how they start. They start the morning with some sense of their journal, right? However that might be. That doesn't have to be something specific, but ultimately each morning with something to ground them before they go into the world. And I have then now over the last 3 weeks or so restarted that. I had done that process forever and I got out of it. I don't know when I got out of it, but just broke the habit, got busy and didn't do it. And I have an amazing, like this men's journal. I love it. And now I'm posting every day because it's, again, that accountability. I just post a quote from it. And it's like, it's a men's journal. So a lot of it's about masculinity and some of it hits me and some of it doesn't, but it's still like that idea for me. It's like, okay, like I'm going to post this every day to like as an accountability that I'm doing it. But the other than the quote, it's just so simple because it's, just what were the 3 positives of yesterday? What are your 3 I am statements for the day? What are you excited about today, this week, and this month? And then what one thing do you think would bring you closer to your goal for the day? And that's it. It literally takes me 3 minutes to get through the thing. But it's been a really good grounding over the last couple of weeks to get back in that process. And I think like for anybody that's watching, that's a theme.
Yeah.
It's a big theme of people like taking that moment individually to ground themselves in some practice. That can be journaling, that can be prayer, that can be meditation. But it seems as though those that are living the authentic life, or that I'm connected with, that I want to do this podcast with, have that practice. And that morning practice doesn't have to be the 5 a.m. go work out, crush it, practice it. That's great if that's you, but each person has come up with their own sort of morning practice before they jump into the world.
Yeah. I think it's a matter of, whatever helps you look in the mirror, and realize where you're at and where you're starting and how you're feeling and how you're going to show up in the world. Again, I think it's the price of entry for living is being aware of who you are and how you feel and how you show up. And I genuinely feel that way because for so long I did not show up. I just went through the motions and put on the face and put on the jazz hands and did the thing. And I just remember how not only difficult that was to pull off every single day, but how lonely, you know? And I mean, we are pack animals. We are wired for connection, as Brene Brown says. You know, as humans, like we are not meant to be solo creatures. We are meant to have community and
even though solo feels comfortable
oh god,
most of the
yeah,
time, right?
So comfortable. I love it. But I feel how much it hurts me to do it for a long period of time. When I avoid people, I am not at my best. Even though as an extreme introvert, I would love to do it forever. Like I look at those jobs where it's like, come and herd sheep on a remote island and be a caretaker of a lighthouse. And I think that's my dream.
Yeah.
Never see a human again. But I know that it would have a lasting negative impact.
Right.
And so I know that to show up in the world, I first need to look at myself and know how I'm showing up.
Yeah.
And no matter whether that's work or home or whatever is, you know, the more real and human that I can be, the better human I'm going to be.
Yeah. So if I'm alone and sitting in my loneliness and don't know how to even begin to be authentic, I think there's so many people that are in that space, even though they're posting each day on the social medias or putting on their makeup when they're dropping off their kids to school, or you name you know, I'm going to all the sporting events, so you look at the faces and you can see in their face the burden of loneliness that they feel, even though they have millions of people around them. And you felt that way. I felt that way. You know, everybody's like, you're crushing it on social media. Everybody loves you. And I'm thinking, like, I don't know any of these 10,000 people that follow me. I don't have any lasting connection with them. And I feel like completely alone, even though there's a million people that, like, if I called today, would show up for me. What steps would you give that person to start the process of learning to have, I don't know if it's vocabulary that I'm looking for, something to say, you know, where do I start to either acknowledge my loneliness and allow people to enter my life to create relationships again?
So I read something the other day that I thought was really interesting. It said if you can have 8 minutes of actual connection with someone, like a conversation, you know, just 8 minutes, it can change your emotional state completely. It can have a massive impact on your mental health. And it's just 8 minutes. And I remember reading that, and the person that had posted it said, so I'm starting to tell people, like, I need 8 minutes. I need to have 8 minutes of conversation, and learning to ask for that. You know, because people will say to you, oh, if you ever need anything, just let me know.
Yeah.
Or, hey, if you ever want to have a chat, you know, like, you can call me anytime. But, you know, we get so busy. And even this happened this week. I reached out to a friend and I said, hey, how's it going? We need to catch up. And they were like, yeah, I'm really busy. I can't, you know, like, I don't have any time this week. And I immediately felt that, like, oh, but it would have been different if I had said to them, I need 8 minutes because I am in a place where I really need to have a conversation with somebody. And so I think it's asking for what we need, but it's also being aware enough to say, like, I need to intentionally have a conversation with someone about whatever for enough time to lift me out of wherever I am. And 8 minutes is not a lot of time. 8 minutes is a phone call to the grocery store while you're in the car. Yeah.
It's like, hey, help me.
Yeah.
I need.
Yeah, but also know, like, I'm not asking to be a burden and sit on your couch for 2 hours and cry and eat ice cream. Like, I need 8 minutes in the car while I'm on the road to sit on a phone call and just have a conversation about your chickens, whatever. Like, enough to, like, be aware that you are not asking to be a burden. You're not asking somebody else to bear your burdens. You're looking for enough time to start the process.
Right.
And I think, you know, knowing that, that helps me go, hey, I need 8 minutes of a phone call.
Yeah. Well,
Not a lot, just a little bit.
yeah, I think uh, the three things that I remind myself, and I think dudes need to remind themselves, but I think in general everyone, is just to even ask the question or to communicate what you need, right? And so those three things of like, I need you to either just listen, I need help, I need you to fix it for me. And I'm gonna blank on the third one. A second, I'll remember it in a minute. But ultimately, like uh, or acknowledge. I didn't
Yeah.
need you to acknowledge, I think is the third one. And I just have to remember that all the time with those around me. It's like, okay, and I've even started using that when people come into the office or whatever. I'm like, hey, are you like, I'm a fix it dude, right? So, and I think I'm smart and I know a lot of things, so I can give you the course of action you probably should take. Are you looking for that right now?
Yeah.
Or are you looking for me just to acknowledge that that really sucks? Or you don't want me to say anything at all. You just want me to sit with you. Which of those things? And it gives
It's a muscle
freedom.
though. You have to work that.
Yeah, it
That
gives
does not, it's
freedom.
not an overnight thing. Um, like I still have days where like my brain is a big fat liar and it is like, no one cares, Val. No one's going to take your call. Like, this is terrible. You suck. Everything sucks. Everything's going to suck forever. Um, and I have to literally stop and go, that is not true. I have to look at myself in the mirror and go, what you are feeding yourself, that soundtrack is not real. It is not true. I said to somebody the other day, I have to liken it to like when I'm in a dream. Like I dream a lot when I'm sleeping, and sometimes I have to like wake myself up from the dream and go, this is not real. This is not really happening. People are not really chasing you with swords.
Mm.
I might be reading too much, historical fiction
Yeah,
these days,
that's
but
the trauma. I get it. Yeah.
but like people are not really, and I have to go wake up. And I have to do that when I'm awake too. I have to be like, Val, this thing that you keep saying, like, you're terrible. No one's ever going to hire you again. Like, people think you're crazy, blah, 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 whatever. It's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to literally do that all the time. And instead of wallowing in it, because if I wallow in it, it's going to become true.
Yeah.
It's going to be the only soundtrack that I put into my brain, and it's going to be the truth. And that's, like, that's the problem with faking it. Like, that will become your truth. So sometimes you have to say, what I'm thinking right now is not true. And I need to acknowledge that. And
Yeah.
then I need to get in front of somebody else and have a conversation that will continue that growth process.
Yeah.
It's a muscle. We have to work it.
Yeah. And to honor that past, right? I think of like, for me right now, I'm going through this process of trying to recognize, okay, where did I come from? Where am I going? And honoring the past for what it was, and then saying, what do I want next? And that's a different space, right? And so to I think for people that are trying to figure out their world or their journey, to honor past while striving for future is a different one. I actually had my marketing girl write up a poster that I'm going to post at my office, because I have not been going into the office really until the last couple months, and just last year was a tough year. There was a lot going on with getting remarried and trying to blend families, and we had a legal procedure that took a lot of emotion and everything. And so we're in this rebuilding phase of life, where I am, and then Ellen Grace is too. But I made this poster up because I was always I never acknowledged my success, right? Because I felt that I failed. And I'm like, just because the Steve Voker's group business model that I had didn't work out doesn't mean I failed. But emotionally, I always felt I failed. And those agents that worked for me like are highly successful. And so I'd always be like, well, that's my legacy. At least they are successful, even though I wasn't, right? And it's amazing the things you put in your mind. So I actually had this poster made. Well, I'm making the poster. She just sent me the graphic, but it's from my best year. And it's, number one agent, 2023, 270 transactions and 43 million. And it says, I'm no longer hiding. And for me, that was like just this trigger this past week was like, why would I hide that success? doesn't mean I want to be there again in that way or that process. But like, wait a minute, like you need to acknowledge what you've created in the world instead of saying like all that, like just because of these 5 things, that was a fail. And that like,
Yeah.
that's a different
Yeah.
space to have people sort of like look at and acknowledge and say, hey, like life is, as you said, messy, right? And just not put together. And so our brains are going to try to keep us from going back there. And I felt like that's what I
Yeah.
really, the poster for me was like, wait a minute, like don't not sell real estate at a high level because you're afraid of going back to that space, because
Yeah.
you're not going to fail again. You know so much more now. But that's just,
I think that's true of everything in life. Gosh, like, I mean, do I want to go back into a relationship? Do I want to get another pet? Do I want to own a house again? Just because, like you aren't starting from scratch, you're starting from experience,
Yeah.
and I think so many of us, we struggle with that fear of like, this is where I was. I was in that mud puddle and I'm going to always be in that mud puddle. No, growth. Like
Yeah.
we're growing. Everyone around us, like give yourself the same grace that you give the other people around you to realize, oh my God, I'm preaching to myself right now. Of like, yeah, I look at other people. I'm like, I'm so proud of you. Look at where you've come from and look at where you are. And yet I look at myself and go, oh God, like you're still still in that mud puddle in your head, Yeah, we have to allow ourselves to grow the same way that we allow people around us to grow.
Yeah, but we don't. It's very hard, right? To give yourself that grace,
It's a
to be like,
daily
wait a
practice.
minute, like
Daily practice.
I'm Steve, and I'm just Steve, and I need to acknowledge that is who I am, and all of those hurts and all of those struggles are the lenses I carry, and from those lenses allow me to be a better version of myself that I was
Mm-hmm.
a couple hours ago before we started this conversation, ultimately.
Yep.
So, is there any last things that you'd like to put out in the world that we did not talk about?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so.
No? Good. Okay. Well, thank you
Yeah,
for
thank you.
participating and coming, even though it was a tough morning mentally. But
No,
like, this is great.
this is good. It was more than 8 minutes, so I
It
feel
was.
I feel great. I actually feel like
Yeah.
this is exactly what I needed today. But I mean, it's so true. Like, get around humans. Oh, it's so hard for some of us, right?
Oh,
It's just easy to hide, but
yeah.
get around other humans and be real, and
Yeah.
it's amazing what it does
Yeah.
for the soul.
Yeah. So, thank you for being here.
you.
Thank you those that have been watching. This I think will be episode 11 when we put it out, which is a big milestone to go
Yeah.
past 10. Wally was telling me originally, like most people don't make it past 7 and in podcasts, that 7 sort of is like this magic number that like, again, 80-90% of people start one.
Is that because we only know 7 people who are willing?
Well, yeah, I mean, well, that's what I was about to say, Valerie, that I am starting to struggle with gas. So those that are out there that do listen and do participate, I'd love to have your referrals, right? That anybody that might know somebody that would fit and would be open and transparent and authentic, we'd love to meet them. It's been fun when we had Michael on. I didn't know him at all, and just to have a story and a conversation with him was great. Obviously, Paul and I are still looking for Matthew McConaughey to come on.
When are you going to do one of these with Paul?
Well, yeah, Paul's got like chicken. He's got like a whole.
I feel like the guy behind the camera is always
shit.
the most interesting.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, we'll put Wally back there and we'll have Paul on one of these times. Yeah, see, yeah, this is good. So, yeah, we'll have Paul on, and then McConaughey will have to come on because Paul's so interesting. I'll have to one-up Paul, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So, anyways, let's wrap it up. I'm just Steve with my friend Valerie. Thank you for tuning in and hanging out with us another time.
Thank you.
All right, see ya.